At the core of this credit crisis is the housing market, but also a level of trust or lack of trust in the people that you do business with. And we're going to talk about trust right now. It is the topic of a new book called The Speed of Trust, the one thing that changes everything, by Stephen M R Covey. Mr. Covey, so nice to meet you.
Thank you, Melissa. Great to be on the show.
Well, help us to understand a little bit more about why you decided it was time to write this book. And boy, oh boy, does it seem like the perfect time for you to be traveling the country talking about this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because trust is always something that we assume, we take for granted, we neglect until we lose it. And then we become very painfully aware of it. So I began to say we need to focus on this deliberately and explicitly up front as a vital economic driver in our lives, in our business, and in the economy as we're seeing today. So I've always been saying this is what makes the world really go round.
Well, in today's global economy, it sometimes becomes even more challenging to have that trust because you also have the cultural differences as well. So how do you overcome that?
That is a challenge, and you're right, it is truly global, interdependent, everything is connected. But you overcome it one way is through how you behave. Do you behave in ways that respects the differences and that actually listens first and tries to understand first? And so your behavior makes a big difference in how you'll overcome trust that is different based upon different cultures and the like.
Well, how do you create trust and how do you rebuild that trust when it has been broken? And I mention this because of the current economic crisis we have, or you look back just a decade ago at something like Enron or the collapse of WorldCom. How do you rebuild that trust after you've shattered it, after you've broken it?
Well, here's a principle. You can't talk yourself out of a problem you behaved yourself into. In other words, you can't just talk your way out of it. The only way to get out of it is to behave your way out of it. So how do you rebuild trust? Through behavior. It's always a matter of credibility and behavior. And words alone aren't going to do it. You're not going to restore someone's trust by just saying, hey, I'll do better, I'm sorry. They need to see, maybe they maybe need to hear the words, but what they really need to see is the behavior that follows. So you have to behave your way out.
What are some of those behaviors?
It's things like talking straight and being transparent so people can see exactly what you're doing and why. And righting a wrong. If you make it, you make it right when you're wrong. And clarifying expectations. And then practicing accountability to what you just said. And I'll tell you another behavior that builds trust fast is to keep commitments. You do what you say you're going to do. It's the fastest way to build trust in any relationship or at any level.
You're talking about a business relationship, but everything you've been talking about also is perfect for a personal relationship with your spouse, a child, a colleague.
Precisely. See, trust always begins with yourself. Trust always begins with the one. Self-trust precedes relationship trust. And that precedes the organizational trust, which precedes the market trust. So it's all interconnected, but it all still comes back to each person, that you can become more trusted yourself and build relationships of trust, and then you watch how that leads out into a business or into the society at large.
Well, how do you start to trust someone else again when they have broken the trust, though? What do you look for or signs that you know that they're on the right path?
Yeah, well, are they wanting to restore it is one thing. Because if they don't want to, then maybe it's time to move on. But if they want to, then what I look for is, do they own it? Do they take responsibility as opposed to blaming? And then do they right the wrong? If they've wronged me, do they make it right when they've been wrong? And then, above all, I'll look to their behavior. Do they do the things that they say they're going to do? Do they behave their way out of the problem that they behaved themselves into? If I see that, then I'm open to restoring it with them. And if I'm the one that's violated someone else's trust, I have to do those things. I have to own the responsibility, I have to right the wrong, and then I have to behave my way out of it. But when those conditions are present, it is possible in many situations to restore trust.
You're a keynote speaker. You travel the country talking about this book, also talking about the entire business you have with your father as the co-founder and CEO of Covey Link Worldwide. So I'm curious if there's a story or an anecdote that you share with people that you've experienced, whether you've broken someone's trust and then regained it, or someone who's broken yours and then slowly gained your trust again.
Yeah, well, I tell the story of my son, who, when he turned 16, got his driver's license, and we set up some rules together, and then he went out and broke the rules and got pulled over for excessive speeding and kind of violated the trust. Well, my wife and I, his mother, we suspended his license. We didn't wait for the court to do it, we did it. And after a while, though, we gave him his license back, and now he had to rebuild it. And here's the happy ending. It's been 5 years ever since. And he's been a model driver since that time because we observe it, but we hear from his friends and his friends' parents. And what has happened is, through his behavior, he has restored the trust to back to where it was and even higher than it ever was. So is it possible to restore it? It is. It's not easy, but you'll do it through credibility and through behavior. And that's true of a personal relationship. It's also true in a business, and it's even true in a global economy where the trust has been evaporated.
And it takes time. Certainly not going to happen overnight. Clearly,
Not
it took your
overnight.
son some 5 years. We'll have to see how long it will take a lot of people in the world of lending to have that trust once again as well.
Well,
I was just going to say, Stephen R. Covey, such a pleasure to meet you. Stephen M R Covey, Stephen R. Covey, your father as well. And the book is The Speed of Trust, the one thing that changes everything. Mr. Covey, nice to meet you.
thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.